For my book, I read Packing for Mars by Mary Roach. The first chapter is about how really Japanese astronauts, interesting aspect of how they are picked to go into space. One of the tests that they have is they need to make a chain of 100 paper cranes. And what they do is they observe the cranes for quality to see if they get sloppier at the end or if they were consistent or maybe they sank a little in the middle. And that really shows character for if you are on a space shuttle, you need to do that same objective over and over every day. So if you aren't able to keep up that quality, they may not want you for that. Even if you're really smart and even if you have other good test scores. Now the second chapter really focuses on isolation and the effects on being in a cramped space for weeks at a time. They had tests where they had fake spacecrafts that people would stay in. They would have the same space food, the same living quarters, same thing as an astronaut would have, just without the zero gravity. But they would have to stay there for weeks, isolated in a small box. That is really, it can damage the mind. Could you imagine having claustrophobia problems and then multiply that by 1,000,000 because you have to stay in there for weeks? You have disgusting food. You have, this will be mentioned in a later chapter, but to go to the bathroom, they relieve feces in plastic bags, which I find disgusting, and they keep that on there until they land once again, which means the participants of this test had to do the same. Not exactly delightful. Can obviously cause some problems, so that's why they had some psychologists come in and evaluate what happens to the human condition when someone is left like that. The third chapter is about the infinite of space and how that could really just blow your mind. Like, it's just what you see in the movies. It's like bright colors, that's awesome. Your mind's blown, you're just awestruck. And that's what this chapter focuses on, of the effects that could have while you're in the middle of a space flight, and the positives and the very worrisome negatives of that. And one of the quotes I have is, Kittner was ordered by his superior, David Simmons, to begin his descent, and he replied, "Come and get me." And he sent it in Morse code. And that's kind of really, you just blatantly defied an officer, and that's something that you wouldn't really expect that someone would normally do, but it's happened. And he said when he got down that it was just a joke, but could you imagine having someone's life at stake and they just say, "Nope, I'm good up here, I can just die." So that's pretty bad. And then another one is, Simon recalls thinking that the weird and little understood breakaway phenomenon could be taking hold of Kittner's mind, that he was gripped in this strange reverie and was hell-bent on flying on and on without regard for the consequences. That's what psychologists said about his crazy response. So that's one of the dangerous effects. You can't just do that, but it happens. Space travel really isn't as sophisticated or ordered as some may think after I've read this book. That's my personal opinion. Although I don't want to step on any toes, people obviously work very hard on this. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, some people are. Anyways, on to the next chapter. Chapter number 4. Now, this one talks about just the idea that they had to run so many tests on living in zero gravity. The body effects, some of them thought that your blood would just float around, that your innards inside, your guts, internal organs, they would just mix all up, and when you landed, you would die because they would, like, cut each other off or something. Pretty alarming accusations when no one really actually knew what would happen. So they ran many tests in zero gravity, atmospheres that weren't actually zero gravity, they were just simulations, which are always fun. And they realized that the only real big problem with zero gravity is that there is extreme bone loss. Sometimes they see up to 5 to 10% of your bone mass is lost. And when you think that, oh no, that's not that much. If you try to step down on that after that happened, your bone would snap. You would literally break your leg just from trying to walk. Astronauts really have this huge problem when they come back. It's a serious problem, and they haven't really figured out a way how to stop it. They did have an idea to have some kind of vibrating device that would shake your leg and the bone, and that your body would just strengthen it. Because what your body does is it naturally gets rid of what it doesn't need to use. So if you're not using your bone structure to support yourself because you're in zero gravity, your body's going to get rid of it. And you don't want that, because when you try to walk again in normal Earth gravity, you're going to have a hard time. It's probably not going to be fun. So that was pretty much the entirety of that chapter. There was a lot of just jumping around ideas of what they thought. It really wasn't that interesting, I would say, but it does bring up a fair point of one of the problems that astronauts and space travel have. On to the next chapter, then. Okay, so the 5th chapter. Oh my god, we're almost halfway through the book. Amazing! Anyways, this is about I was talking to you about the last chapter about how the human body would react to zero gravity. Well, this one is how everything reacts in zero gravity. Imagine when re-entering and your spaceship burns up, it's melting, and there's a gap. You would probably die and burn on fire if nothing happened. So what they do is they tested a robotic welder to see if it could weld in a lowered gravity area. So this is all about testing whether, I guess, what water does in zero gravity, what food, what everything does. See, you can't take a shower in zero gravity, because if you tried, the water would go everywhere. They tested out a fan at the bottom of the shower, but what happened is it would just form in clumps and globs at the bottom, and when you breathe, the water will form around the mouth and the nose, which will suffocate you. So that's definitely a no. So people go a long time without taking showers in space. All of these scenarios have been tested. That's what this chapter is about. NASA tests every single possible scenario that they can think of. Maybe not all of them, maybe not all, because they haven't thought of it. But one day they will test it, because that's what they do. Anyways, on to the next chapter. I really didn't have much about this chapter because I felt the author inputted too much of her own life and the experience that she was going through to write this book, or what she was actually doing at the time. So it didn't have as much information as I would have liked. But that's okay. It adds a certain personality to the book. This entire book has an undertone of her personality in it, and I find it really interesting. On to the next chapter then. Next chapter, chapter 6, called Throwing Up and Down. It's a very accurate name, because this entire chapter is about motion sickness and how in zero gravity your body mixes up in what direction you're going. This is called sensory conflict. Your eyes, what you see, and your vestibular system, fun word to say, mix together. They can't understand what they're seeing. Your eyes can look directly at what inside the cabin. You look like you're not moving, but you're shooting at a super fast speed, and your vestibular system feels that and it knows that you're moving. But your eyes say, "Wait a second, I'm not. I'm just sitting here. I'm not even moving. Are you crazy?" So what happens is that it sets off a reaction where you vomit. Now this reaction, you're like, oh, what purpose is this? This could be a real useful thing. Actually, everyone says it's completely useless. Your body goes, I can't understand it, and then just vomits. Because, why not? It's just one of those quirks that can't happen. There's several useless things in our body. We don't really know why it's there. It's not apparently helpful to any of us. And this happens a lot in space. And a really funny part that the author recognized was that even during the Apollo mission to go to the moon, they both threw up in barf bags. I'm betting you didn't hear about that in the news, or you didn't see it. They only covered the parts that made them look like heroes. But really, astronauts are just people that have the exact same afflictions as you or me. And they even have a test chair where they spin someone like a rotisserie chicken for several minutes. Doesn't really sound like fun, does it? It really tests the sensory conflict, and they say that they could make anyone throw up. But there are several people that have their vestibular system doesn't work right, so only your eyes are used for what you see as movement. So your body doesn't feel like you're moving. Like, you'll feel the press, obviously, when you're thrusted back into your seat, but other than that, no. So they could spin there for days and days without ever vomiting. I'm kinda wishing that mine didn't work that well so I could do that. But it's just one of the body's quirks and one of the many problems with space travel. Guess you're starting to wonder if going to space is really worth it. I mean, do you want to do all this? I don't. on to the next chapter. Chapter number 7. Oh, hey there, kids. This is chapter number 7. That's going to get really annoying very quickly. Chapter number 7. NASA visits the crash test lab. That's what it says in the table of contents right here. You can't see it, but I can. Anyways, in chapter 7, it basically covers NASA's crash test lab, which is pretty awesome, because imagine you're a hurtling ball of fire coming at the Earth at hundreds of miles an hour. You're probably gonna want to make sure that whatever you're in that is a ball of fire is very protective. Because if you don't, you'll basically become a boiled mush. Not really going to what you were planning for, I'm guessing. So they had to test all of the crash systems. They superheat them at ridiculous heats with like jet blasters and everything. It's all cool. And you think like lab coat guys with the clipboards and everything. That's what I had in my head anyways. So they have to test the wind resistance, the fact that it would catch on fire. You know it has to be very heat resistant, and you know that you have to find some way to slow it down, because it's not going to slow itself down. No. You're going to have to slap a parachute on that baby. And it can't be like those cheapo $1 like blankets with yarn strapped to it. No. So they have what it is a capsule usually, and it looks sort of like a cone. And at the bottom, if the bottom of that cone is rounded, this is usually on most spacecrafts, and it has to be very heat resistant. And the parachute opens and only stops you enough to the fact that when you hit, you won't die. It's not going to be a soft landing, but you won't die. You have to be expected. Also, they have to make sure it's expected that you're not going to hit your mark. You're either going to hit land or water. You want to hit water, but it's not certain. When you re-enter, you're going all over the place. They can't pick if you're going to the ocean, to land, or if you're gonna land on top of Mount Everest in like 2 seconds. Didn't you have to climb? Hooray. But they have to account for all these. All of them. In one of the astronauts gave an oral history of their spaceflight that went wrong. The capsule turned upside down and caused the heat plating on the bottom to be completely useless because they didn't put any at the top. They need to eject the parachute out of there. So what happened is that it heated up to such a point that the rubber on the door that sealed it completely melted, and he wasn't able to move because the G-forces are way too much. You can't even move your arms. You're completely helpless. All of this is just up to luck. You're falling and hope you don't die. So what happened is that it flipped back over and his parachute opened. He was lucky to be alive. But by that time, all of the rubber in there had heated up and melted and was now cooling down, so it sealed him where his door wouldn't open. And he was quite hot himself. And this is actually a real problem, because hurtling at the ground at hundreds of miles an hour, not being in the right direction, is life or death. I would not want to be this guy. No one would want to be this guy. It's just unfortunate at how this happens. So they have to make up with every scenario. They expect everything to go wrong. Everything. So they have to test for the heat, all that. What I already told you. It's a very interesting chapter. I think this is probably my favorite chapter because it has very detailed just story of how this person almost died. Another person landed in some like village that didn't even speak English and they thought they were like an alien or something. This happens all the time. Like they don't really plan where you're gonna land. They just say that you're gonna land. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, on to the next chapter. I'm sure you enjoyed my rambling. And, well, next chapter. Do you like monkeys? 'Cause I like monkeys. That's right. We're gonna talk about space chimps. Not that movie or whatever that they did for little kids, but actual space heroes. The first astronauts, of course, we were racing against Russia to get to space first. It was the Great Space Race, they called it. At least I hope they did, or else I sound stupid. But the first astronauts weren't actually human. The first astronaut was a monkey, a chimp, named Ham. And he was the first astronaut. He went into space, and they did tons of tests on him. People said it's inhumane, it's not okay to do this, but it's probably better to do it to an ape, a chimp, monkey, one of those, than to a living human when you have no idea what's gonna happen. And people want to go to space. It's pushed by propaganda, politics. People are like, yeah, space, let's go. So, it's better to do it on an animal, I think. And they did do this. Actually, Ham probably wasn't the first space chimp, but he was the most memorable, and he's even in the Space Hall of Fame, I think, and his body is preserved. He's not stuffed in a museum or anything. He's buried right next to all the other astronauts and stuff. It's pretty cool. I mean, I think it's not actually like space. I think it's like the like Air Force whatever, but they actually buried the monkey because he's a huge hero. And then there was another monkey named Enos, which was the second space chimp, which actually went into space after we went to the moon. I'm pretty sure, at least. Okay? Yeah, I'm not really that sure, but pretty sure. Anyways, Enos was not as popular as Ham. He was not the prettiest of the girls. I'm just kidding. Anyways, he wasn't as popular because he couldn't be seen on TV. There were stories of him fondling himself. This is gonna get really weird. Stories of him fondling himself in public when they had interviews and stuff, so they couldn't show him. And the trainer said this was all fake. This wasn't true. But there's several other sources that say that he did it often and in public when they were trying to interview and they couldn't. Anyways, let's keep that there. Now this is gonna get really weird. Really weird. Anyways, so what they had was an inflatable balloon, a small balloon that they put inside his penis to stop him from masturbating. That's what they thought. What they actually said was that there was something poked into his thigh to like test his blood and everything. It wasn't actually in his penis. That's kind of gross. I know this is kind of weird, but it's part of the book, and I want to give as much information as I can, and I hope that this is considered school appropriate. If it's not, completely forget that I said any of that. I kind of found it interesting in a very strange, messed up way. I don't even know why. But this was a very interesting thing because Ham was such a huge hero. He was Space Chimp, and it was really, like, controversial. I mean, a chimp could do your job, astronaut? Why are we sending you up there? We can just have a trained monkey do it. Well, I guess they're kind of right. Most space travel is completely automated. All robots. I mean, there's rovers and stuff on the moon, and I don't think... Yeah, Mars. They have one on Mars. I forgot about that. There's one on Mars. Like, humans can't get there, but they have a rover. Because, you know, it's just easier. Humans are unpredictable. You have to keep them alive. There's just so much food and extra weight that costs thousands of dollars to send them. Why not just send a chimp that we can, like, feed liquid food, which you already do astronauts, but they won't change their morale. They're animals. So, it's just really a controversial, interesting thing about the space race, but it was actually with monkeys. Strange. So now, we're going to the next chapter. You knew I was gonna say that. Chapter 9. In just 1 second. This chapter is about talking about going to the moon. I know, I was just whispering a second ago, but now I'm yelling. Because it's fun. Anyways, this is about going to the moon. But you're thinking, oh, the moon, that's awesome. I thought you were talking about Apollo earlier and whatever. Not the moon, but a simulation. Cool, right? So, it's easier to go than to train astronauts on a fake moon. They have it somewhere in, like, Hawaii. I'm gonna say that really wrong. Hawaii, because it's fun. But it's... like, it's not actually, it doesn't have less gravity, it's not, but they do have, like, the simulated area. You have to have your suit on at all times, you have to drive in the rover, you have to be in those close quarters, and except it's a more open spot, like, what it would be like if humans had a small sort of colony, I guess. I don't really want to say colony on the moon, because I don't think that's about right. Anyways, totally off topic here. I just want to remind people, the moon is actually owned by the U.S. Yeah, that's actually a thing. It's because the flag's up there, right? It's actually claimed for the U.S. So whenever you look up at that bright white sphere in the sky, remember... America. Anyways, off topic. But it's completely decked out with, like, the moon rocks and stuff. They have objectives. You have to follow your time slots exactly. It's not like a big dome or whatever. So it does rain. That wouldn't happen in space, obviously, unless you're on a habitable planet. But anyways, this chapter... not that actually that interesting. I mean, there was a few things, like, I mean, it would be pretty cool to go to, like, space camp, yeah, for, like, a week or two, but spending, like, working there for years, not fun. I'll stick to my video games, procrastination, and fatty foods, please. Anyways, on to the next chapter. Chapter number 10. Yeah, that one. That's the number. Houston, we have a fungus. That's the name of this chapter. I thought it was very creative because this whole chapter is about not showering. That's gross. Stereotypically, men don't like to shower. I like to shower. This is about men sacrificing their hygiene in the name of science. In space, if you're out there for a week, you're probably not gonna shower or take a bath. You're gonna have wet wipes, basically, to wipe yourself clean. Ew, gross. So, what they did is they wanted to see what would happen to your body if you stopped showering and had pretty much a rubber suit on at all times in a very closed off area. Doesn't really sound like a good idea, does it? Doesn't sound very appetizing either. So what happened is that their shower whatever modified thing that they had to clean themselves, all of it was gone, and they had lowered power, so what they couldn't bathe for several weeks. Not several weeks, like a week. Anyways, what happened is they started to get a fungus. Gross. Grody. Anyways, all of the hygiene was thrown out the window. All it does is it causes fungus. No one likes that. But it doesn't really have too much of an effect on that. Other than, like, people are not going to want to stay up there. They're not going to want to stay up there. They're in a closed space. Someone unzips their spacesuit, and the stink cloud literally smacks them in the face. No one's going to want to stay up there. So that's all it really was about. Get a fungus. It's gross. And I kind of found this chapter very interesting, but it's kind of gross at the same time. It's really disgusting. Like, vomit-inducing, as I was saying earlier. Like, I don't want to go through most of the details, because it's just gross. Like, people, they were like, there's like, here's a rag, and I'm like, oh, am I gonna clean myself up with it? It's like, no, it's for your nose. I'm gonna take my spacesuit off for a while. That was literally one of the things. It's kind of gross. Anyways, on to the next chapter, number 11. Yeah. Next chapter. Anyways, chapter number 11, as I said earlier, I'm recording this in segments because I do it one chapter at a time. It's easier, I take a break, listen to what I said, make sure I don't sound stupid, which I already do. Anyways, now this chapter is about never getting up and no exercise. Pretty much what I do on a daily basis. Yep, this is all this is about. Astronauts don't really have the space or time to exercise in space. They don't have, like, a gym. They don't have, like, barbells. And they're like, oh, yeah, pump it. Do you even lift, bruh? Like, they don't do that. They have to just stay there, lay around, and just press a few buttons. Done. That causes muscles loss and bones loss and just overall laziness. I mean, they actually have a clinic of just, it's like in a hospital, like a clinic, where people are paid to sit there and lie down without getting up for a year. They get paid to do this. They could play video games while they do it, watch TV. All they have to do is promise to not get up. That's all. It's ridiculous. They even have astronauts come in and thank them and, like, for doing this in the name of science. Like, no! They sat there and did nothing. They do nothing. Oh, God. I wish I could do this. But I can't. So, yeah, that's basically the rundown of this. Like, you can't get up. There's, like, a hole in the bed or whatever, so you can poop into, like, this toilet thing. Of course, the smell is eliminated, so you don't have to smell that or whatever. But they even give you, like, food. But when they give you the food, the chicken is in cubes. It's not like breasts they cut up, it's like cubes. Pretty gross. So they're not really happy about the food. It's basically, you can only eat what they put into you, like, with few exceptions. And that's about it. You're paid to do that. And it probably does help, because they have to, like, I think, like, it's every week they measure how much muscle mass you have and how much you can lift. I mean, do you even lift, brah? Only once a week, that way their muscles don't get adjusted and they're not, like, super ripped. It's like, you try to lift this up. Oh, I can't. And that's it. Extremely interesting chapter. One person actually did this twice. That's 2 years. 2. Of just sitting there, lying down, and getting paid for it. With free food. Why am I not there right now? A man can only dream. Anyways, to the next chapter. Number 12. So, for this chapter, I'm gonna do something really special. I'm gonna skip it completely, and you're gonna think, what? Why are you skipping it? I want to hear about it. This chapter itself is named Mating Without Gravity. So basically, it's astronauts who have sex in zero gravity. Not really comfortable with, like, explaining the whole chapter. It's gross. They talk about porn and stuff. And I just wanted to let you know that, because I'm skipping all over it. I know this might not be school appropriate to say this, but I'm just saying I'm skipping over it because of those specific reasons. I hope this doesn't affect my grade. I just really don't feel like talking about this. Like, it goes way farther in depth than I need it to go, ever. This is really kind of the weirdest part of I shouldn't say that, this whole book is weird. This is the weirdest part of the book. I don't even know why it's here. It kind of stands out from the rest of it. I kind of skipped maybe most of it because, well, I didn't actually skip most of it. I skipped like a page or two because I found it boring. I don't care, and that's about it. So, hope you enjoyed this real in-depth explanation of chapter number 12. Anyways, on to chapter number 13. Alright, you know what's going down. Well, what's going down is a human. That's right. This chapter, it's about bailing out from space. I mean, you're just like, okay, I was just joking there. This is about that whole Red Bull stunt where the guy jumped out from space and the gravity pulled him down where he could reach supersonic speeds. They talked about his equipment and his helmet and how if you started to spin at those speeds, you wouldn't be able to stop. You'd be dead. It would actually, you wouldn't even hit the ground. You'd lose consciousness in a minute. Or your brain would just be shooken into a mush and you would die. So there was no room for error as there is in most space flights. This was a huge deal. Red Bull's doing their normal, we're the best, support action, yeah. I kind of really don't understand this. Like, I kind of get why they put this in here, but it kind of feels like advertisement almost. Anyways, they talked about his helmet, they talked about his suit, and how his parachute had to hold it. There's no time for emergency shoots. So if your first shoot does not work, you are going to dead. You're going to dead. That's good grammar. You're going to die. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And this was a really cool stunt. I will probably, yeah, I'll put a link to it because it's cool looking. I like cool looking things. And this was just a huge accomplishment for mankind to just be able to jump out from space, and your own body is going at supersonic speeds. You're not in a plane, it's your own body, you're going whew. And this really didn't have much to do with space travel. It's like the last chapter. Like, these 2 chapters are just so out of place from the rest of the book. I don't know why. I'm like Detective Sherlock Holmes here, but I can't figure out why. Anyways, we'll just go to number 14. We're almost up to 15. How old I am. Yeah, pretty cute. Anyways, chapter 14. This chapter is an interesting chapter, just like all the other ones, while mildly disturbing, just like all the other ones. This one is called Separation Anxiety. And when you think separation, I don't know what you think. Just think for a minute. What are you thinking? It's about feces, human feces, and how astronauts had to poop in plastic bags. This whole chapter is just about that. That's all it is how they're going to get their waste products. Their spacesuit has for males, have a condom and a tube attached to it there's like a tank that it fills up on your suit. It's kind of gross. And then when you have feces, you're expected to put a plastic bag up to your anus and then do what you would normally do. But they don't have any way to get rid of it after that. So you're stuck in a space capsule where you can't get out and you can't release your feces anywhere else. So it's in a plastic bag. It smells very bad. And it's just staying there. It's just sitting there. There's nothing you can do about it. And of course they probably put it in a container or something so it doesn't float around. It's really gross. But that's really all this chapter was about, is how your waste products are given off and how they cope with those problems, which they couldn't have like a toilet or something. It would be like inefficient space, or like it would have to have like a suction function, which is disgusting. I don't think anyone would want to do that. It'd be more dignifying to poop in a plastic bag than have a suction toilet. This whole chapter was really messed up. Anyways, let's go to chapter 15, and holy smokes, this is getting to be a long podcast. Anyways, chapter 15. Imagine eating as a vegetarian. That's right. You can't actually eat meat when you go on a space trip. I mean, what you have is basically vegetable paste. That's the only thing you can eat. Meat is not allowed. Although it says that steak would probably be one of the best things that you could eat, and people would probably like it. But it doesn't provide all the nutrients that you need. So what they have is a very high nutrients. What they do is nutritionists look at their dog food people. They go, this is what you need. We'll add a little flavor. That's it. It's completely disgusting. And they don't want to eat it anymore. Which causes huge problems if you're in the middle of space and someone goes, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here. Let's go back down. If they haven't completed their mission. And this will drive away many people. So you have basically 2 options. You can either improve the food, or you can have people that won't mind. Or you can have the chimp idea, which I kind of like. I like space chimps. Food, let's talk about food in general, what they had to do to keep it. When you have a sandwich, you can't eat a sandwich in space. The crumbs, the whole thing will break apart because it doesn't have something to hold it together. On Earth, where there's gravity, yeah, those two bread slices or buns are going to hold them together. But in space, it's going to crumble apart and go everywhere. So what they have is they have like a thick, they have like a waxy coat on the outside of the food cubes that they give, or the paste. They say that the paste is a problem because you can't see what you're eating, unless you're eating applesauce. That's what they say astronauts love the most, because it's something familiar. Okay, back to the food cubes. The food cubes are bite-sized because if you can fit the whole thing in your mouth, then you don't need to worry about crumbs. It's like if you eat chips, if you put the whole chip in your mouth, there's no crumbs, is there? So it's just a way to keep it clean, because those crumbs could go behind a panel or fly into someone's eye, because it doesn't just fall to the ground, it floats around. It does whatever it wants. It's space. So that was a pretty interesting chapter, actually. So it talked a lot about how food can change a lot in space. I mean, that's a huge problem. I would not want to eat little cubes that are covered in wax for weeks, or have paste of food for weeks. Both of those are disgusting ideas, but they're only looking for functionality. Yeah, that's what this whole chapter was, and it was a lot of this chapter was stories of astronauts and how they didn't like what they were eating, and just how they said it tasted, because I think it was like after the Apollo mission, the ISS or something. But what happened is that the sandwich broke up into little pieces everywhere, and he had to grab it and put it in his pocket quickly, or else it would have gone everywhere. And the NASA actually got a budget cut after that due to just food. Like, if they can't handle food, how are they gonna handle billions of dollars of taxpayer money? And the idea was that they couldn't. Anyways, on to chapter 16, the final chapter. We're on the final chapter. Chapter 15. This chapter wraps up everything that was in the rest of this book. And it really, the actual chapter name is Mars worth it? I mean, you gotta really think about that. After all I've said to you, you gotta take into, like, there's so many things that could go wrong. We're not even close to the technology to get there and keep humans alive. We can send a rover there, sure, but that's not gonna be enough. If you want to send a human there, it's gonna take a lot. And you're not gonna send one human, you're gonna want to send a crew of people. But is it worth it to spend? You'd have to have years of supplies for those people. I mean, you'd have to find a way where they could go to the bathroom where it's not in just plastic bags. They're not gonna want to poop in plastic bags and put it in some container and just have it collect there for years. That's not okay. And you need to get supplies there, not just to survive them the trip, but if they're actually going to build something there. Are they going to build something, or they are spending years just to stay one day at Mars? It's like a long car ride on a one-day trip where you get to stay at the place for half an hour and then have a 5-hour drive back. Not exactly fun. So, is it worth it? I mean, okay, so what we talked about, food, other supplies, facilities to go to the bathroom. Are you going to have male or females? Like, what team are you going to do? Is it going to be different races? Is it just going to be Americans? Or are you going to have, like, different nations contributing to be able to go to Mars? I mean, there's all of these all of these thrown in your face? Or are you going to have advanced robots go to Mars? Because it'd be easier to just shoot a ball into space, have them parachute down, and bam. You don't need any humans, but you need to have them be advanced. Not just a rover. You have to have them be able to build things, to pick up things, and to be able to send stuff. Like, we see pictures from Mars, the rover on Mars, but they're just black and white photos of dust. Like, how is the communication going to be really good from that far away? Like, all of these have to be taken into account. We, honestly, what I've read from all this book, we are not anywhere close to being able to visit Mars. I think the moon, building something on the moon or colonizing it would, I know I said this was kind of ridiculous, but it is so much more imaginable than going to Mars. It's too far away right now. We should just, it's always in the back of NASA's mind. It's always in the back of everyone's mind. Like, yeah, we're going to go to Mars. And there's no Martians that we know of that we have seen yet. So there's nothing inherently interesting for us to go there. That's another factor. Like, if we go there, what's the worth? Is there material worth? Is there just knowledge worth? Like, there's nothing really there that we have observed so far. So we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? I have been doing this for a very long time now, and I would like to proudly say I am finally done with my ridiculously long podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today, even if I'm a little weird the way I say it. But we will someday unlock the mysteries of space. And this book gives me faith that someday we will figure out all these problems, no matter how difficult or disgusting, really disgusting they are. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You probably didn't, though. That's not cool, bruh. You gotta have some respect. Anyways, I've been babbling on long enough. I'm glad that you sat through all of this, even though it's your job. You have to do it. Kind of in your face. Haha. But I kind of spent a lot of time on this, so if you could just give me a good grade, I would be extremely grateful. And you can't see right now, but I'm picking up my microphone and waving it all over the place, just so you can give me a good grade. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed. 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 I hope you enjoyed.